Watkins, Minnesota was the kind of town where news usually traveled by word of mouth, not emergency alerts. It was home to roughly 1,000 people, a small community where families knew each other's routines and strangers stood out. In the summer of 2016, Watkins was still recovering from a tornado that had torn through in July, leaving damaged houses and broken businesses behind. The cleanup had been loud and constant. The rebuilding was slower, the kind that stretched across long days and even longer nights. By mid-August, the weather had settled into warm, late summer evenings. The sun stayed up late. The streets stayed quiet. Most families tried to keep life normal for their kids, even while they were still repairing what the storm had taken. 5-year-old Alayna Ertl fit into that town like she had always been there. She loved pink and purple. She loved dress up. She also loved being outside, getting muddy, climbing, exploring, and following her dad into whatever he was fixing. So she was fearless in the way only little kids can be, the kind who would climb onto a shed roof without thinking twice if it meant helping. Her mother, Kayla, called her their little peanut. Alayna had a smile ready for anyone and a hug that came easily. She adored her big brother and followed him like a shadow, learning from him and copying him, wanting to be included in everything. In 2 months, the family was supposed to celebrate Elena's 6th birthday on Halloween. She was already talking about it. For the Ertl family, life felt steady, safe. Familiar, that sense of safety ended in the early hours of August 20th, 2016. The night before, on August 19th, Elena's father, Matt, went out after a local softball game. He was with his friend and co-worker, Zachary Anderson. They played in the same local softball league, and going to a bar afterward was routine. Around 10:30 p.m., they went to the Riverside Tavern to relax with the rest of the team. They drank, they talked. At 1:00 a.m., the bar closed. After Riverside Tavern, they went to Gordy's bar, only a few blocks from Matt's home. The night continued as the town slept. Back at the house around 2:00 a.m., Alayna was asleep in the living room. Kayla carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed. Alayna had a favorite blanket, an Elsa blanket she slept with every night, and Kayla made sure it was with her. It was a small detail, the kind that parents do without thinking, a nightly routine that felt normal and safe. Matt got home around 2:30 a.m. Zachary Anderson arrived later, sometime between 3:30 and 3:45 a.m. He and Matt talked until about 4:40 a.m., then went to bed. It was not unusual for Zachary to stay over. The house went quiet. At 8:30 a.m., Kayla and Matt woke up. The first moments of the morning felt ordinary, the slow shift from sleep to routine. Then they realized Alayna was not in her bed. They checked her room. She was not there. They searched the house. She was not in the living room. She was not in any corner, any closet, any familiar hiding place a child might choose. Panic grew quickly, and then another missing piece became obvious. Matt's work truck was gone, a 2002 GMC Sierra. His phone was gone too, and Zachary Anderson was gone. In a matter of minutes, the scene changed from a missing child to something else entirely. Alayna did not wander off on foot. A vehicle had left during the night. The one adult who had stayed over was missing at the same time. At 9:56 a.m., the call went out for help. By early afternoon, the urgency became statewide. 1:12 p.m., an Amber Alert was issued for Alayna Ertl. She was 5 years old. She had last been seen at her house around 2:00 in the morning. Her family had noticed her missing around 8:00 a.m. The alert also focused attention on Zachary Anderson, describing him as connected to the disappearance and noting his appearance, including a shaggy short beard and a possible black softball t-shirt. In Watkins, the news spread fast. The town had already been through a tornado that summer. People had watched roofs ripped away and walls collapse. But this was different. This was not weather. This was a person, a child, taken from her own home in the dark. The first hours were a race against time. A neighborhood search began. Every possible lead was chased. Phone records became critical. Zachary Anderson's phone provider was contacted in an effort to track movement. Then a major sighting came in. Zachary was spotted at roughly 8:30 a.m. at a convenience store near Browerville. He appeared to be alone. There was no sign of Alayna. Another thread ran through Matt's missing phone, the one believed to have been left in the stolen truck. That phone began pinging cell towers in Todd County. It may have been there as early as 6:30 a.m. The last ping was recorded at 9 Natai County. Before the phone was turned off, the timeline was turned off. The timeline was tightening. The movement was clear. Someone had left Watkins before dawn, driving farther out into rural Minnesota. Less than an hour after the Amber Alert went out, another call reached the Cass County Sheriff's Office. It was Zachary Anderson's father. He believed his son was at the center of the Amber Alert. He also had information. Earlier that day, Zachary had called him and asked if he could go to the family cabin in Motley, roughly 90 miles away from Watkins. The father gave permission for the cabin to be searched. Deputies were sent out immediately. The drive was long enough for fear to settle in. A cabin in the woods could mean many things. It could mean hiding. It could mean an attempt to disappear. It could also mean the worst kind of ending, something done far away from roads and neighbors, where sound would not carry and time would stretch. Near the Wilderness Park area in rural Cass County, deputies arrived on the Anderson family property. They found the stolen truck first. Matt's GMC Sierra was parked in a ravine, positioned in a way that suggested it had been hidden. The location and the placement were not accidental. Someone had driven it there and tried to keep it out of sight. The deputies moved toward the cabin and searched room by room. Inside, they found a firearm and ammunition. They found a note that appeared to be connected to Zachary, a message that suggested he wanted to hurt himself. There was blood on the upper corner, but Zachary was not there, and Alayna was not there. Outside the cabin, deputies found footsteps leading into the woods. The ground carried the story forward, footprints moving away from the property and toward the darker, wetter areas beyond. Cass County Sheriff's Deputy William Connor arrived with his canine partner, Yankee. Without a clear item belonging to Zachary to use for scent, Yankee still picked up something. The dog pulled toward a swampy area, a place where the water was shallow but thick with mud and debris. At 4:24 p.m. About a quarter of a mile from the cabin, Zachary Anderson was found standing knee-deep in the water. He had lacerations on his arms. He did not run. He did not fight. He allowed himself to be taken into custody. The question that mattered most came immediately. An officer demanded to know where Alayna was. Zachary answered with denial at first, acting as if he did not understand the question. He was read his rights. He refused to talk. He repeated that he did not want to speak. He insisted he did not know anything. In those minutes, Alayna's fate was still uncertain. The urgency grew heavier with every second. The idea that she could still be alive pulled at everything happening in that swamp. Zachary continued to refuse, then finally gave a quiet answer. Alayna was in the swamp. The officers pressed him, needing clarity. They asked again. They asked again. Then they demanded that he take them there. Zachary asked for a cigarette. Then he led them through the wet ground to a spot in the swamp and pointed until Alayna Ertl was found submerged in the water, naked, hidden under debris in the southern portion of the Wilderness Park estates. Not far from her, the 9 unit identified another location, about 75 feet away, connected by scent from the cabin area. At that spot, Alayna's favorite frozen blanket was found, the same Elsa blanket she slept with every night. At 6:02 p.m., the Amber Alert was canceled. The search for a missing child became a homicide investigation. Watkins struggled to process what had happened. People who had survived the tornado cleanup now faced a different kind of wreckage. In a town where everyone seemed to know everyone, the shock was personal. Alayna had been seen around town. She was the little girl who waved hello, the child who smiled easily. Now she was gone, taken in a way no one could make sense of. In the Wilderness Park area where her body was found, grief took physical form. A timber cross was built in her memory, a place where people stopped even if they had never met her. The small community gathered in candlelit vigils, standing together because there was nothing else to do with the weight of it. A GoFundMe was created to help Alayna's family. The goal was reached quickly. Donations came in fast, not because people understood, but because they did not. The details of Alayna's death revealed the cruelty behind the disappearance. She had been asphyxiated. She had suffered blunt force trauma. There was evidence of sexual assault. Zachary Todd Anderson was 25 years old. He faced multiple charges, including second-degree murder, criminal sexual conduct with a person under the age of 13, and kidnapping charges tied to felony harm. His bail was set at $1 million with conditions or $2 million without conditions. To many people, Zachary had seemed like an ordinary part of their town's social circles. He played softball. He smiled. He was known. He was known. He was trusted enough to sleep in the Ertl home. That trust was part of what made the crime feel even more sickening. It was not a stranger at the edge of town. It was someone inside the normal life of a family. As his background was examined more closely, an older pattern appeared. Years earlier, in May 2006, Zachary had been 16 years old. He lived with his mother next to a 31-year-old single mother with 2 small children. His behavior toward her grew strange and unwanted. He left notes on her car windshield, telling her she was beautiful, leaving his number, pushing himself into her life without invitation. She believed he stole cigarettes from her garage when it was left unattended. Then, early one morning, around 1:30 a.m., he showed up at her front door banging furiously. He was in his underwear. He demanded she open the door and sleep with him. He tried to force the door open. He fled when her boyfriend came to the door. In June 2007, the situation escalated again. The same woman was asleep upstairs with her children when Zachary removed a window screen downstairs, broke into her home, grabbed her phone from a coffee table, and ran. He was charged. He later pleaded guilty to third-degree burglary. He was sentenced to community service and ordered to write a letter of apology. He was also ordered to have no contact with her. She was so afraid of him that she moved. Because Zachary had been a juvenile at the time, the incident did not become a public part of his adult reputation. In Watkins years later, he could still be seen as just another local guy, someone involved in sports and work, someone who blended in. After Alayna's murder, Zachary entered a plea of not guilty to 19 charges. His defense challenged parts of the evidence and challenged how early statements were obtained. A ruling limited what could be used at trial from certain moments after his arrest, but the physical evidence remained. Alayna's body was recovered. Her blanket was recovered. The scene itself did not disappear. Before the case went to a full trial, Zachary's path changed. He ultimately pleaded guilty to first-degree murder involving first-degree sexual conduct with penetration. The other 18 counts were dropped. Immediately after the plea, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Alayna's family, life did not return to normal. It could not. The days after a child's murder do not move like ordinary time. They become a series of hours that must be endured, each one shaped by the memory of what should have been and what now could never happen. Alayna would have turned 6 on October 31, only 2 months after she was killed. Her mother, Kayla, chose to hold a birthday party anyway, not as denial, but as an act of memory. That choice became the start of something larger. Sharing Alayna's love became a charity mission aimed at helping other families in crisis, donating toys to children in hospitals, building gift baskets for children in need, and turning grief into something that could still carry Alayna's name. In Watkins, people remembered how the town had responded after the tornado. When buildings were damaged and lives were shaken, neighbors showed up. They hauled debris. They cleared roads. They rebuilt what they could. After Alayna's murder, the same thing happened in a different way. The damage was not lumber and glass. It was trust and safety and the belief that a child in a small town was protected by the closeness of the community. Some things could never be repaired. Alayna's life could not be restored. The missing future could not be replaced. But the town gathered around her name, around her family, around the simple image of a little girl who loved pink and purple, who played outside, who hugged easily, and who went to sleep one night with her Elsa blanket, never meant to face anything darker than a bad dream. Zachary Anderson took Alayna Ertl from her home in the early hours of August 20th, 2016. He stole her father's truck. He drove her into rural Cass County toward the family cabin near Motley and ended her life in the swamp. Alayna's story ended in the water, hidden under debris, while the sun moved across a Minnesota afternoon. And in Watkins, the rebuilding began again, not from a storm, but from something far worse.